Regarding your calculation of the value coming from its generation business, what assumptions did you make with respect to existing investments in power generation plants, and if there will be subsequent investments in the years ahead, leading to additional cash flows from that component of the business?
The investments we have included in the valuation of Meralco were those already existing in GBP and in Singapore. In addition to that, we also included those power plants which have already achieved a technical and financial feasibility. Such power plants are RP Energy and Quezon Power 2. In total, they contributed a value of 90 pesos and 40 centavos to our valuation.
So aside from these five plants, you don't expect any further investments going forward that will add to revenue?
Actually, Meralco also plans to invest in two 1,500 megawatt liquefied natural gas plants, one in Bataan and one in Batangas. These plants have not yet been included in our valuation as they have yet to achieve both technical and financial feasibility. Also, they are currently undergoing feasibility studies.
Regarding the distribution component of your valuation, in the news recently, Pangilinan said that they're investing in additional, or they're buying power distribution companies, about 3 or 4. Did you consider that in your assumption, or if not, how might that increase the cash flows in the future?
Yes, we do acknowledge that the company is planning to invest or expand its franchise. However, this information was not yet available as of the cutoff date. We believe that the Meralco buying other electric cooperatives in Luzon would add to the value of Meralco and thus increase our upside.
Too bad the market's closed. I felt like buying the stock after. But then I remember there's a company in the States, the US, called Solar City, which is involved in solar power, which is now, I think, the largest solar operator there, which is actually posing now a threat to some of the distribution companies in the US. Given the current situation in the Philippines, you now have the Renewable Act. I guess it's possible for a similar company to get into that area here, including other renewables, which would pose a threat to Meralco. How do you think the company should deal with that?
So we acknowledge that renewable energy has its benefits such as cleaner and more sustainable energy. However, one must also consider the time horizon and the cost it takes to actually set up these plants. In order to mitigate the upcoming demand and supply gap, Meralco actually imposes a short and a long-term solution to help the Philippines meet its energy needs. For the short term, it plans to invest up to 1,060 megawatts in coal-fired power plants. Now, the benefit of these coal-fired power plants, namely RP Energy and Quezon Power 2, is that they are easy to set up, given that one only needs the delivery of fuel and they are not limited by geographic or natural resource constraints. Now, in the long term, Meralco actually plans to invest in two 1,500 megawatt liquefied natural gas plants in the future. They are currently under their feasibility study stage, and they are also in line with the DOE's LNG plan for the upcoming years. Once these investments are operational in the Philippines, we can expect that Meralco will play its part in bringing down the cost of electricity for Filipinos and ensuring the stability of supply.
The assumption you have for the tariffs coming down and then going back up, can you give us more of your thought process on why rates should go back up, considering that I guess in Asia, or maybe in the world, the Philippines is already one of those countries with the highest power rates. We have a, it's very heightened today, populist demand just to bring power rates lower. It seems, counter to maybe what the government wants to achieve. I mean, it already hollowed out our manufacturing sector, a lot of, cost drivers in countries like China. Why should that go back up? I mean, wouldn't there be a trend for lower rates moving forward?
With regards to our computation of the distribution rates, this was actually a result of the prescribed methodology of the ERC. We followed the primary building block approach where we forecasted both the return on capital, operating expenditures, as well as the regulatory depreciation, as well as other line items of the regulatory map. Now this regulatory map, by following this methodology, we will get the raw map. Now this raw map will be adjusted according also to the prescribed methodology of the ERC by a price control formula. This price control formula takes into account a smoothing factor as well as performance incentives, which will give us the adjusted map. The pattern that you saw, where from a decrease of the map, it will eventually increase, was a result of this formula. This formula aims to decrease the burden for both the distribution company as well as the consumers of a sudden price shock in the distribution rates.
Also, Meralco has commissioned a study back in 2012. Its researcher was international energy consultants. And based on this study, there are two primary reasons for the high electricity costs in the Philippines. First being is the lack of subsidy compared to other regions in Asia. In this region, there are a lot of government subsidies as the power sector there is state-owned. Second is that there are high intrinsic costs of supply here in the Philippines. The Philippines is very dependent on imported fuel, and also there's the geographic challenge of transmitting electricity from one island to another.
Given all these reasons, that is why electricity rates in the Philippines are higher as compared to other countries.
Just a follow-up question. What's your WACC assumption here?
The regulatory WACC that we assumed here is at around 12%. This is a decrease from the previous WACC of 14.97%.
Okay, and your cost of equity assumption in your WACC?
The cost of equity assumption in our WACC could be at around 16% because the prescribed methodology assumes a 75% percentile for this cost of equity.
Just wondering, you think you should maybe increase your discount rate in the DCF just because regulatory risk is heightened?
We believe that the cost of capital in our DCF and the cost of capital and the WACC for our regulatory map is a little bit different because the regulatory WACC is prescribed for a group of distribution utilities, not only Meralco. This is for the first entrance of the distribution utility. Moreover, this regulatory WACC is adjusted for a regulatory cost structure which is 40-60%. However, Meralco's cost structure is different from this. As such, we believe that there could be a difference between the regulatory WACC as well as our cost of capital for our DCF assumption.
Just very briefly, can you explain how they make money as a res?
As a retail electricity supplier, Meralco earns revenues from its contestable customers. Contestable customers are defined as those who consume a peak demand of an average of 1 megawatt per month. Now, Meralco would earn a margin over the generation charge from these contestable customers. In forecasting our revenues from the RES, we forecasted the volume to be sold to contestable customers. We use the current volume sold to contestable customers as the base for this. And this was grown using the growth rate of energy sold to industrial customers. Now, the margin is based on an international study conducted in Australia and UK, where the margins range around 3 to 7%, and we use a 5% margin from the generation charge.
Thank you.
Going back to your slide on WACC, could you explain how you arrived at your cost of debt?
For the cost of debt for the regulatory WACC, ma'am, or for the company WACC?
What did you show?
It was the
slide
regulatory WACC. Okay, the computation for the cost of debt for the regulatory WACC is based on the risk-free rate used for the cost of equity. This risk-free rate is based on the indirect method wherein the US risk-free rate was used, adjusted for the difference between inflation in the US and the Philippines, plus the country risk premium. Now, in addition to this, the ERC prescribes a debt margin of 2.5%. Adding the two, we were able to get the cost of debt for our regulatory WACC.
And the company WACC?
The company WACC, we divided the business into the power distribution business and the power generation business. For the power distribution business, the WACC is composed of the cost of debt and the cost of equity. cost of equity is based on the capital asset pricing model. For the risk-free rate, it is based on the yields of 10-year government bonds as of November 26. The beta was computed by regressing Meralco's daily returns over a 20-year period with the PSEI.
Time's up.